Hello YouTube land, this is Jeremy from the Practical IT channel, bringing you another video. Today we're talking about the host file, and knowing about the host file is a great thing whether you're running Linux, Mac OS, or Windows, or BSD, or something a little more obscure than any of those. So let's get started. Okay, just to make things easy and to be able to provide a reference for everybody, I'm following along with an article from linuxeyes.com, and I will post the link down at the bottom in the description, so take a look at that. So what do you need to know about the host file? The host file is used to map domain names to IP addresses. Well, you might be thinking already, what about DNS? DNS, Google DNS, there's Cloudflare DNS, there's all kinds of public DNS, including the one that comes with your ISP, the DNS addresses that come with your ISP. Well, second paragraph points that out nicely. Your host file has priority over DNS. So before you go out even to your router or to your internet provider, if something is already listed in your host file, then you'll access it faster and you don't have to hit either of those other resources. It's particularly useful if you want to test your website without changing the domain DNS settings. Example being migrating your website to a new server. So for the remainder of the video, we're going to follow along the article and we're going to look at how to modify the host file on Linux, Mac OS, and if I can get it to cooperate, maybe even Windows. First things first, they give you a bit about the host file format. IP address, space, domain name, and then any domain aliases. What does that look like in real life? Well, here's a bit of a host file. 127.0.1.1, linuxeyes.desktop, and linuxeyes. So if we jump over to my terminal, we are currently on my Linux Mint machine. And so you've got the 127.0.0.1 localhost and 127.0.1.1, which is the host name I gave it, HPND. And you can see in this section we've got some stuff that's commented out. The hashtag or pound sign or number sign, whatever you want to call it, will comment out lines. And so this I did when I was working on some Ansible stuff. And since those are virtual machines, I've gone ahead and commented those back out. So you've got your IPv4 section and the IPv6 section. We jump over to the Mac side. It's very similar. They've got comments at the top, localhost, Pi-hole 2019, which I've got commented out, the broadcast host, and localhost, this is IP version 6 here. So all very similar. Okay, so to modify the host file in Linux or Mac OS or BSD, you would need to edit etc host. Now, for Mac OS and Linux, you would generally use sudo and the name of whatever text editor you like. I'm not going to get into a rant here. Sudo nano /etc/host. And of course, you'll be prompted for your password. On BSD, and I'm going to make a disclaimer right up front, my BSD usage up to this point has been limited, but from a couple of BSD experiences, you would generally log in as a root user or change to the root user after you're logged in as your regular user, and then you would just do nano etc/host, and you would get a very similar editor to what you're used to. Nano is available for all three platforms, Linux, Mac OS, and BSD. So what if you are doing Windows? Well, let's see if we can make our Windows machine cooperate here. Alright. And we've got our host file here. Notice something that you don't see all the time on Windows, but there is no file extension. So if it gets renamed to host.txt, it may not work for you. Make sure you get rid of the extension and just call it host. And the reason for this is because Unix systems had networking before it was built into Windows. And so to make Windows interoperate with those systems that already had networking capabilities, when Microsoft got around to adding it in, they added this as a layer of compatibility for networking. We're going to do Notepad host. And as you can see, you've got a bunch of comments here at the top from Microsoft, but when you get down to it, it's the same format. So you can make changes here as necessary or add to it. Alright, back to our article. So they go through Windows, Mac OS, and then they give you a little conclusion. Alright, so why would you want to mess with this? You may be thinking that, hey, everything's working fine. Why do I need to learn about the host file? It's 2019 and things just work. Why mess with it? Well, I gave you an example earlier of the host file having precedence over DNS. But there are other reasons, or kind of a combination of reasons. And one thing you can do is block unwanted connections with a host file. So take, for instance, a situation where you might have children in the house and you're managing their computers. They don't have administrator access on them, and you do this in part to lock it down and stay on top of security and keep them from visiting sites that you don't feel that they should be visiting. Well, you can effectively block websites by using a custom host file. So if you make an entry that's 0.0.0.0 and you put a host name after it, it'll block all files supplied by that server. And so there is, at this website, this is winhelp2002.mvps.org/hosts.htm. This has typically or historically been aimed at Windows users, but it is applicable to any system using a host file, which we covered earlier is basically everything. Well, you can download a good size, and by good size I mean 428 kilobytes in size, host file that has all of these items set up for you. And you just add this into the host file on your machine. So this is what the file looks like. And it has a little advertising and talking about the comments at the top, license info for commercial purposes, contact WinHelp 2002, but it is under Creative Commons. So yeah, this goes through a bunch of tracking cookie sites, spam dexing, spotlight ads, there's another tracking cookie, ad solutions, all kinds of stuff is built in here, and the fewer connections you're making out to the internet, the faster things are going to feel. So if you take into consideration the host file having precedence over DNS, you can handle a lot of this stuff before you ever go out to the router and then to your internet check. There is just a huge amount in here, and we are just, I mean, there's the halfway mark, give or take. But it will block all kinds of stuff, and including stuff from Russia.ru, and just keep you safer in many ways. Now, this is not to say or to imply in any way, shape, or form that you should be doing this as your only security mechanism. When you think of security, think of the famous quote from Shrek, "Ogres are like onions, they've got many layers." Your security should be the same way. You should have layers on top of layers of security, and no two people are going to implement things in the same way. But if you are maintaining just a handful of computers, or you want to have some extra peace of mind if you're going to be taking a laptop out and using public Wi-Fi, this is not a bad way to go. If you're just doing desktop machines, then I might suggest pushing you towards a solution like Pi-hole, which does a lot of this kind of thing for you on a Raspberry Pi or in a VM, which we have covered in other videos. But it's not a bad thing to know about your host file. It's not a bad thing to even build in some custom entries so that if whatever public DNS servers you're using, if they go down for some reason, you have a way to still get to those websites. Whereas if your DNS is down, it might just say, "cannot reach host," or "no path to host." And you're basically SOL unless you start making other changes. And there are a lot of people out there that don't have the technical knowledge to do that, or they're just uncomfortable doing it. And this is where a lot of people just call their ISP. "What's going on? I can't reach google.com. Help." So don't be that person. Take a little bit of time and learn about your host file. If you're not using a solution on your local network, such as Pi-hole, then you may want to consider implementing this on your machines. That pretty much covers what you need to know about the host file, and that brings us to the end of another practical IT video. As always, if you like this video, please give a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the bell icon for updates, and feel free to share the video on your social media. If you have questions or comments, please leave them down below. I do try to answer those as quickly as possible, a couple times a week. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.